Hi, my name is Lupilo. I've been trying to understand the implications of the murder of Hamas leader, Ismail Haniyeh, on a recent article published on Asia Times titled, Hamas leader's killing could trigger Iran-Israel war. Ismail Haniyeh's murder, assuming Israel was behind the explosive attack, will spark anger in Iran and pressure Tehran to respond, Ian Parmenter writes. Palestinian militant group Hamas says its top political leader, Ismail Haniyeh, has been killed in his home in Tehran. It blames Israel for the attack, saying it was a Zionist airstrike on his residence in Tehran after he participated in the inauguration of Iran's new president. Iran has not yet given any details on how Haniyeh was killed, but says it is under investigation. With the war in Gaza showing no sign of abating and the whole Middle East on a knife's edge, the killing raises questions about whether it may spark a wider regional war. Haniyeh is the most senior political leader of Hamas, based in Doha, Qatar. He was essentially the Hamas leader for the ceasefire negotiations with Israel in the Gaza war, brokered by the United States, Egypt, and Qatar. These negotiations will obviously now be on hold. While Israel has not yet claimed responsibility for his death, and this is unlikely, given it does not typically claim responsibility for covert actions, Haniyeh has long been on its list of targets. What is surprising, though, is where and how it was done. Haniyeh was in Tehran to attend the swearing-in ceremony of Iran's new president, Masoud Pezeshkian. Details of exactly what happened are still sketchy, but it appears Haniyeh was killed along with one of his bodyguards by an explosion in his building. We do not yet know if the explosion was from a remotely controlled bomb or a missile attack. Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, is investigating the killing. What does this mean for a wider regional war? He continues, there are two important issues that will be under close scrutiny in the coming hours and days. The first is that assuming it was Israel that was responsible for Haniyeh's killing, it raises the question of whether Iran will retaliate because Haniyeh was under the country's protection when he was killed. His death is likely to cause enormous anger in Iran and may in turn prompt retaliation against Israel on top of that from Hamas. Tensions between Iran and Israel have long been high. In April, Iran launched more than 300 missiles and drones at Israel in retaliation for an attack on the Iranian consulate in Damascus. The attack killed several senior IRGC leaders. The attack on Haniyeh is indicative of a remarkable degree of intelligence and operational access that Israel seems to have in Iran at the moment. In recent years, there has been a steady stream of Iranian scientists working on the nuclear program who have been killed. This includes the program's father, Mohsen Fakhrizadeh, who was killed by a sophisticated remote-controlled machine gun in 2020. However, there remain Hamas leaders on Israel's list who, as far as can be discerned, are still alive. Gaza political leader Yahya Sinwar is apparently still directing the operations of militants there. In July, Israel carried out a strike that was believed to have killed the elusive military leader Mohammed Diaf. However, Hamas has not acknowledged this, and Diaf has survived several previous assassination attempts. The second major question is whether Lebanon-based Hazbollah will launch an attack on Israel at Iran's behest. The Haniyeh killing comes within hours of an Israeli airstrike in southern Beirut, in which Israeli officials believe they have killed senior Hezbollah commander Fuad Shukr. If Iran were to retaliate, it might be through Hezbollah from Lebanon. A major missile barrage from Hezbollah could potentially overwhelm Israel's Iron Dome missile defense system. Iran also has other allies on which it can call, including Shia militant groups in Syria and Iraq, as well as the Houthis in Yemen who have already launched a drone strike on Tel Aviv last week. Israel quickly retaliated. What happens now is difficult to say until there is more information. But what is certain is that the killing of Haniyeh is likely to cause a significant escalation in the Gaza war, and possibly in the wider Middle East. Another article by Mariel Rabiz updates us on the also recent Golan Heights strike, titled Golan Heights Strike May Ignite Full Israel-Hezbollah War. Escalation in attacks and counterstrikes could draw in outside players like Iran, sparking a wider regional conflagration. She goes on. A missile strike that killed 12 children playing soccer in the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights on July 27, 2024, has prompted international concern that the Middle East conflict could expand into the disputed territory. Israel has blamed the Lebanese militant group Hezbollah, and it has already conducted retaliatory strikes with more expected. To explain the importance of the Golan Heights and what the latest strike could indicate, the conversation turned to Mariel Rabiz, a scholar of Lebanese studies and chair of Middle East studies at Dickinson College. What is the Golan Heights? Located in southwestern Syria, the Golan Heights is 1,200 square kilometers, 460 square miles of mainly stony hills that overlook Syria, Lebanon, and Jordan. Today, over 40,000 people live there. More than half are Arab Druze, including the community in the small town of Majd al-Shams, the site of the recent attack. Many of them identify as Syrian citizens and refuse to accept Israeli citizenship. The rest are Jewish settlers, most of whom arrived in the territory after it was occupied by Israel more than half a century ago. Can you walk us through the history of this occupation? In June 1967, after the Six-Day War between Israel and three of its Arab neighbors, Syria, Egypt, and Jordan, the Golan Heights fell under Israeli occupation, along with East Jerusalem, the West Bank, the Gaza Strip, and the Sinai Peninsula. This prompted the United Nations Security Council to adopt Resolution 242, which called for Israel's withdrawal from all of those occupied territories. It also called for the termination of all claims in states of belligerency and respect for and acknowledgement of the sovereignty, territorial integrity, and political independence of every state in the area, and their right to live in peace within secure and recognized boundaries free from threats or acts of force. In 1973, Syrian forces reconquered the Golan Heights in a surprise attack, before Israel's counterattack reclaimed it. Israel withdrew from some Syrian territories. However, it refused to return the Golan Heights and insisted it would do so only after the signing of a peace treaty with Syria. A year later, Syria and Israel signed an armistice agreement in which both countries agreed to a ceasefire and for a United Nations observer to be put in place to maintain the ceasefire. On December 14, 1981, 8 years after signing the armistice agreement, the Israeli Knesset adopted the Golan Heights Law, which extended Israeli jurisdiction to the region. In other words, it annexed the Golan Heights. The United Nations Security Council responded by unanimously adopting Resolution 497. It declared the imposition of Israeli law over the Golan Heights illegal and called on Israel to rescind its decision. What is the current status of the Golan Heights? Under international law, the annexation of the territory remains illegal. As such, the Golan Heights remains occupied territory, regardless of the Israeli law. There have been some attempts to negotiate a resolution. In 2000, Israeli, Syrian, and U.S. delegations met in West Virginia to that end. However, the talks never went anywhere. Since then, the status of the Golan Heights has been put on the back burner, as events elsewhere in the region have demanded more attention first. A provocative visit of former Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon to Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem in 2000 sparked Palestinian protests that became the Second Intifada, or uprising. It was followed in 2006 with a war between Hezbollah and Israel. Then, on March 25, 2019, U.S. President Donald Trump signed a proclamation endorsing the annexation of the Golan Heights and recognizing it as Israeli territory. Echoing Israeli arguments, the proclamation noted that control of the Golan Heights was essential to safeguard Israel's security from external threats, notably from Iran and terrorist groups, including Hezbollah. If the Golan Heights is occupied Syrian territory, why is Lebanon involved? Along with being an ally of Iran, Hezbollah has had a complicated but recently close relationship with Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, intervening in the country's civil war on behalf of the Assad regime. As such, the Lebanese militants see themselves as allies of Syria in its dispute with Israel over the Golan Heights. But complicating matters further, Lebanon and Hezbollah are involved in a long-running dispute that puts them at odds with both Israel and Syria. It centers on an area located in the northern end of the Golan Heights called the Sheba Farms. Israel claims that the Sheba Farms is part of the annexed Golan Heights. After appointing cartographers, the United Nations announced that the Sheba Farms is in Syrian territory, and Assad asserted that the land was Syrian in 2011. Despite these assertions, Hezbollah continues to claim that the Sheba Farms area is Lebanese territory, and that Lebanon has the right to resist the Israeli occupation there. Why is the region seen as important? The Golan Heights is seen as a crucial strategic outpost by Israel. The elevated rocky plateau allows Israel to monitor Syrian activities and presumably push off any act of aggression from Syria or Iran through Tehran-backed Hezbollah. Since occupying the territory, Israel has installed listening posts and military bases. Meanwhile, the fertile land and other features of the Golan Heights make it a valuable asset. It is known for its vineyards and other agriculture. and the territory has wide access to water through the Jordan River, the Yarmouk River, and the Sea of Galilee. In fact, Israel has a chronic water shortage, using up the vast majority of its limited renewable water supply and drawing on additional water resources from occupied land. Is an attack in the Golan Heights unusual? Although the Golan Heights has often been caught in the crossfire between Israel and Hezbollah, this latest strike definitely represents an escalation in violence, and the fact that children were the victims makes it all the more shocking. It should be noted that Hezbollah has been firing rockets into northern Israel in support of Gaza ever since the Israeli retaliatory strikes that followed the October 7, 2023, attack by Hamas. Israel and the United States have both accused Hezbollah of the July 27, 2024, attack on the Golan Heights. For its part, Hezbollah has denied any responsibility. There are at least two ways to interpret this attack, if indeed Hezbollah was responsible. One possibility is that the militant group miscalculated the attention the strike would get from the international community. Although Hezbollah fighters have been engaged in near-daily strikes in northern Israel, the group has to date appeared keen to not overstep the mark in a way that would invite a full-scale response from Israel or give reason for the U.S. to get further involved. An alternative explanation is that Hezbollah deliberately attacked these children to send a message to Israel, one that suggests that Hezbollah is willing and able to start a war on a dormant front, the Golan Heights in Syria. What are the implications of the attack? The implications of a deliberate provocation by Iran-backed Hezbollah could be grave and risk widening the current conflict into a region-wide conflagration. Eager to avoid such a scenario, the United States, France, and other countries have called for an imminent de-escalation in the region. Should these calls be ignored and Israeli military forces respond with force provoking an escalation with Hezbollah, then I believe the consequences of the attack on Majd al-Shams might be dire. Since the October 7th attack, more than 95,000 people have been displaced in southern Lebanon and 60,000 from northern Israel as a result of shelling by both sides. If the intensity of the conflict and the level of force involved increase, the geographical focus might expand to include more villages and towns, and outside players like Iran might openly enter the war. Such an escalation is in no one's interest. David P. Goldman, in an article published on Asia Times, has a different point of view, which he expresses in the same article titled, "No Strategic Spillover in the Middle East." Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh's assassination won't spark the regional conflagration many are predicting. He writes, the killing of Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran early Wednesday, followed by the targeted assassination of Hezbollah commander Fuad Shukr, prompted headlines warning of wider conflict in the Middle East. The price of oil rose by $3. Gold had traded somewhat higher prior to the killing of Haniyeh, but did not move on the news. The muted market reaction is appropriate. Although Iran will fulminate over the killing of a Hamas leader visiting Tehran for the inauguration of its new president, the Shiite regime in Tehran will not risk important assets to avenge a Sunni troublemaker. China's relaxed view of the situation is worth highlighting. The Observer Guanxia.cn, a private news website that often reflects government views, interviewed Professor Fan Hongda of the Shanghai International Studies University. He said in so many words that the elimination of Haniyeh will promote moderation. I think this incident will not have much impact on the Palestinian-Israeli peace process, because now Palestine and Israel have no way to have direct dialogue, and the platform for relevant dialogue no longer exists. So it cannot be said to have a very big impact. David also included one of his fans' point of view, citing that, as for the internal conflicts in Palestine, they are very deep and cannot be resolved in a day or two. There are many people and factions that have opinions about Hamas. So from this perspective, such emergencies, including the destruction of leaders and the weakening of Hamas power, are not only welcomed by Israel, but also by many factions in Palestine. So far, there is a huge gap between the positions of Hamas and Fatah. If Hamas cannot play a greater role now, it will obviously benefit a series of factions, including Fatah and their political positions of peace talks with Israel. As the largest importer of Persian Gulf oil, China has a great deal to lose from a wider war. Israel's response to the Houthi drone attack on Tel Aviv earlier this month is a case in point. Israel retaliated by attacking a Houthi refinery. If it can destroy a refinery in Yemen, it can do so in Iran as well, not to mention Iran's oil terminals. Often the threat is mightier than the execution, and all the interested parties in the region will do their own risk-reward analysis on the subject of regional escalation. As Fan said, We have known for a long time that Iran's domestic security situation is not good. He added, "This is not the first time that assassinations have occurred in Iran. Previously, there have been many cases of Iranian nuclear scientists and Revolutionary Guard officers being attacked or even assassinated on the streets. It is generally believed that there are many spies in Iran, especially Israeli spies in Iran, so it is difficult for Iran's security to prevent them. This is also one of the important reasons why important figures in Iran have been assassinated one after another. Of course, I am not accusing Israel of killing the Hamas leader today. I can only say that there are a large number of Israeli spies in Iran. The message to Tehran in so many words is don't press your luck," Goldman writes.
Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed this content, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with your people. Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed this content, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with your people.